Morning Majority on 630 WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL. This is the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman, Joe DeGeneva, our legal expert, former U.S. prosecutor in the House this morning. Coming up on the show, Lou Dobbs. We'll talk to him in about an hour from now, Fox Business Channel. And Father John Morris, you also see him on Fox on a regular basis. He's written a book called God Wants You to Be Happy. He'll tell us all about that. And we'll also ask him about the end of days that some people say is
this Saturday.
Our way.
Get your helicopter pad ready.
if you have one, I guess you could whip out the credit card.
That's right.
Chris Edwards joins us now, the Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute and an expert on all things related to the budget. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. If you could, give us an Econ 101 lesson here. I know we reached the debt limit the other day, but the world has not come to an end. What exactly does that mean, and why is everything going as it normally would in this country?
Well, the government has about a month or so of leeway where the Treasury Secretary can do kind of financial manipulations to make sure we stay below that debt limit or that we don't go above it. But his manipulations, basically, they will run out by the start of August, and that's when we really hit a brick wall legally, and then either the government has to raise the statutory debt limit or it's got to immediately stop spending. So, curtail the mailing of Social Security checks or stop paying vendors and contractors and that sort of stuff.
So essentially money that we have set aside for bills that are due in, say, August or September, he's using that money now to pay off bills that are due.
No, that's not what he's doing. That's what he can do in August to extend it even more. What he's doing now is sort of financial manipulations that don't really affect the public. I'm saying when the start of August, I think the current date is August 2, they're talking about, unless they stop spending in certain ways, like furloughing federal workers or not paying vendors or something, that's what they're going to have to start doing in August.
So, Chris, this is Joe DeGeneva. Why did the Treasury Secretary say just a few weeks ago that this all had to be settled by May? Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't have to be settled until August. Why did he say that?
Well, because, they keep making all kinds of threats because, of course, they just want a clean debt increase bill. The Democrats in the White House are not the slightest bit interested in cutting spending, and they never have been. And so they're trying to create a pressurized atmosphere where Republicans agree to a debt limit increase without any substantial spending reforms.
So that was a fake by the Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, there's all kinds of fakes. The Treasury Secretary's current fake is that he's saying that we would default if we don't raise the debt limit by August 2. Well, that's not true. He's using the word default in a weird way to mean if we don't keep spending on all our programs, he's calling that a default. But the reality is, again, when we hit the statutory debt limit, if the government immediately starts cutting spending in various ways, we will be fine and we won't default.
Well, the economy is based on trust, right? I mean, I believe that you're going to pay me, and I believe that the money you're giving me is worth something. Isn't that how essentially it is based on how it works?
The private sector economy is.
Okay. So the public sector. Well, that's my point. Is that if people believe that ultimately the United States will pay its obligations, it doesn't necessarily make a difference if we default. If they believe that we will pay them sometime down the road, or am I completely wrong about that?
We're not going to default, and the ultimate. The U.S. bonds are ultimately backed by the enormous taxing power of the federal government, which is frankly almost infinite. I wish it wasn't, but the taxing capability of the federal government is absolutely awesome, and because of that, we won't default on our debt.
Do you think we would be having this conversation today were it not for the Tea Party?
No, the Tea Party has been absolutely crucial in changing the whole atmosphere.
So the Tea Party is not dead, apparently, even though some Democrats say that it was almost 6 months ago.
You can see clearly with the Republican leadership. I mean, folks like Mitch McConnell, frankly, they were always big spending pork barrelers themselves,
right?
And they have been pushed into a corner, and they know they have to cut. I mean, it is interesting to see pork barrelers like the head of the House Appropriations Committee, Rogers, who always loved spending on his district and state and the like. I mean, he is being put into a situation where he's being forced to cut, and I think that's that's good. It shows how the atmosphere has changed. And I'm optimistic on this because I think this is going to be the permanent atmosphere in Washington from here till the end of time. With trillion-dollar deficits year after year, I think there will continue to be enormous pressure on these guys to cut. I think and I hope we're only at the start of it.
Well, it sounds like to me then you say that and correct me if I'm wrong, but do you believe the debt ceiling does not have to be raised then?
No, it ultimately does have to be raised. I'm just saying that there's no particular drop-dead date because they can always start, the executive branch can always start cutting in various ways, like, again, delaying the mailing of Social Security checks.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of talk of late about going back to the gold standard, which we left in the 70s. Is there any benefit to going back to the gold standard? Could we even do that, and what does it mean?
Well, some there's always been this debate. I mean, some hard money people, like Ron Paul, like the gold standard because we have currently the U.S. dollar as a fiat currency. In other words, it's not really backed by anything other than the trust of the federal government. I'm not really a fan of the gold standard. I believe in a pre-central bank system of free banking, as you call it. For example, Canada in the 19th century, they essentially had different banks issued their own currencies. They were all called Canadian dollars, but the banks competed against each other on the basis of soundness and the quality of their credit, and that system worked. It also worked in Scotland for a couple centuries. So, I like that, as opposed to the gold standard. But the general concern here is that the Federal Reserve, we can see how enormously irresponsible it's been in the last few years, pumping trillions of dollars of excess liquidity into the economy. I think a lot of economists think the damage from that hasn't really totally manifested itself yet. So we probably will see substantial inflation down the road because of these extraordinary actions of the Federal Reserve.
Well, what I never understood was why is gold worth anything? It's always been worth something since the beginning of time, since man walked the earth. But, is gold, it seems to me like copper or nickel, which you can actually do some stuff with, would be worth more than gold.
Well, gold is an industrial commodity as well. But you're right. And so some people talk about, silver has in the past been a monetary commodity as well for similar reasons. It's a useful industrial commodity. It's highly valued and precious. You're right. All these commodities, they have real value, and whereas fiat currency does not. So in a high inflationary environment, or when people are expecting high inflation, people run to real assets, whether they are commodities or real estate or something like that, because they're scared that commodities won't be worth much.
Right.
Or the money won't be worth much in the future.
So we have all this gold apparently at Fort Knox, and some people have been saying, hey, why don't we sell it, especially now that gold is worth so much on the market. Would that be a smart thing to do?
Yeah, why not? A lot that gold in Fort Knox, a lot of it was put there originally because when Roosevelt came into office, he issued an executive order essentially stealing all private gold in the United States, forcing everybody to sell their gold to the government, which was frankly an appalling dictatorial kind of a move.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why the federal government originally had a lot of gold. I'd sell. Sure, it's the U.S. government gold's worth something like $370 billion. As part of a big reform and spending cut package, why not sell $100 billion of it and use it to pay down the debt? On our website at Cato, downsizinggovernment.org, we go through every federal department. We talk about all kinds of spending cuts. That selling gold would be one of them.
All right. Good to talk to you, Chris. Thanks for coming to the show. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Chris Edwards, Director of Tax Policy Studies at